Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm al-Azzawi. The debate among Iraqi lawmakers about the security pact with the US is boiling over into serious tension among Iraqi political factions. Accusations of betrayal and treason are flying all over the place. The firebrand Muqtada Sadr has vowed to scuttle the agreement. He says if the agreement is approved, he will issue a call to arms against US troops. But why are Iraqis so skeptical? Does the agreement allow for future extensions of a US troop presence? Will the pact give future Iraqi governments a license to expunge all Ba'athists from political life? And can the phrase joint efforts to fight international terrorism mean Iraq may become a launching pad for military operations against Iran and Syria?
After months of stalemate, painstaking negotiations and political poker play, the US and Iraq have finally agreed on a definite date to end the US-led occupation of Iraq. If Iraq's parliament endorses the agreement, American combat troops must withdraw from Iraqi cities and towns by June 30th next year. And by December 31st, 2011, all 150,000 US soldiers, including trainers and military advisors, would have to leave the country. Iraqi negotiators consider the firm withdrawal date a victory after the outgoing Bush administration had long insisted it would rely on conditions on the ground rather than be tied down to a timetable. Senior US military officials, on the other hand, have been quoted as privately criticizing President Bush for giving Iraq more control over American military operations for the next 3 years than it had contemplated. Some critics say President Bush gave in to Iraqi demands to avoid leaving the decisions to his successor, President-elect Barack Obama. The Security Pact calls for the US to coordinate military operations with the Iraqis and help the country in deterring any security threats. But it also says that the US cannot use Iraq as a launching pad for attacks against neighbouring countries. However, the security agreement, approved by the Iraqi Cabinet by a resounding majority last week, could still be derailed by the Iraqi parliament. Opposition comes from both Sunni and Shia political parties, each with their own vested interests.
Those who are against the agreement oppose it simply because the terms of the withdrawal had been originally determined. But under this new agreement, Iraq will not only allow the US to withdraw in a face-saving manner, but also granted them concession and gains, which would not have been possible without this agreement.
Observers say those demands are unlikely to happen, as under Iraqi law, a treaty approved by the cabinet is a final agreement between two states. Parliament can approve or reject it, but it cannot change the content. But with talks of conspiracy theories and secret deals circulating in Baghdad, critics believe Iraq's parliament would be split further, making it even more difficult for the new security pact to be passed.
To discuss the US-Iraq security pact, I'm delighted to welcome from Baghdad Hoshyar Zebari, Iraq's foreign minister, and Saleh al-Mutlaq, leader of National Dialogue Front, and Asma al-Musawi, a member of al-Sadr bloc in parliament. Welcome to Inside Iraq. Hoshyar Zebari, let me start with you. Critics of this security pact believe that this is nothing more than a trick. There will be enough extensions for US troops to stay in Iraq as long as they want. December 31st, 2011, it is not a sacred date.
No, I think whoever will read the text of the agreement, the timeline of the withdrawal of US forces from Iraq has been decided. 2011 is the final date. And the critics may go on and on, you see, to cast shadows over this agreement for ideological reasons, not about the contents of the agreement as such, because it's a very important agreement, I think. And if their opposition is focused on the very basic idea of having an agreement between Iraq and the United States, they are not very much interested in the details on what benefits this agreement will bring for Iraq and for the Iraqi people.
If that is the case, and explain to me how you explain what the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff of the United States said the withdrawal of U.S. troops is predicated on development on the ground, meaning to say, come December 2011, and if Iraq is still wobbling, security is not great, we will not be withdrawing.
I think he corrected that statement later on, you see, that the United States is committed to the terms of the agreement, whether the military, the administration, and those dates, as far as my government is concerned, they are final. And that's what we have signed, we've agreed on, that these dates should be final dates for the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Iraq.
Saleh al-Mutlaq, this is how you envisage the situation? These dates, as stipulated by the agreement, are final? This is how you cast your vote based upon such an understanding?
Well, theoretically, yes. On paper, yes. The last soldier from the American side will leave on 31st of December 2011. But in reality, I don't think the American, with the existing political situation in Iraq, will leave even in 30 years if things will stay as they are. Unless we change the political process, unless we make the reconciliation, unless we make the correction in this political process, I don't think we will manage to tell the American to leave. And I think the Chief of Staff was right in somehow that at that time maybe it's not the American who are going to force themselves on the Iraqis, but the government at that time will ask them to stay if the existing situation will continue. So unless we find a real build-up of the political process, unless we find a cohesion between the different parties, so that the division in the political groups now is not going to be at that time, unless we do not face the Iranian influence again. Unless this
Before we
influence will
talk
not
about
continue.
the Iranian influence, Saleh al-Mutlaq, you know, things might get a lot more complicated if we are to believe Muqtada al-Sadr, Asma al-Musawi. Your leader says that if this agreement is approved, not only he will use all political means available to him to kick the Americans out, but he might just issue a call to arms. So in a way, would that complicate the issue and perhaps prolong the U.S. troop presence in Iraq?
Actually, we don't want to restrict the opposer of the security pact only for the Sadr group. Actually, today there was a loud scream have been declared from the Iraqi population through demonstration that lasts for about 6 hours, and hundreds of thousands of people go to the street and demonstrate in the street of Baghdad and announcing their refusal for the security pact.
But will that be translated into votes in Parliament, Asma al-Musawi? I mean, for instance, with all the reservations Saleh al-Mutlaq has against the security pact, most probably when it comes to voting on Monday or Tuesday, he is going to approve it. Perhaps he might correct me later on, but that's what I'm trying to find out, whether the thousands of demonstrators we saw in al-Firdaus, will it be enough for the Iraqi political leadership to say no to this agreement?
Actually, if we go back to the people found in the United States of America, in the Congress and in the governments, and even the American people, they now realize that the war in Iraq is not justified. And that's why there was some form of the change in the policy of American government. And that's why we saw the changes in the election of a new person, a new culture they found in America because of the protest of American people, and they saw that it is a not justified war during the last 5 years.
Mr. Zibari, whether we are talking about two timelines, the timeline you negotiated with the U.S. government, and we saw you with Ryan Crocker signing, initially at least, the agreement. Now, Mr. President-elect Obama says that he would like to have even a faster pace of U.S. drawdown, maybe less than a year. Is Iraq ready to assume security responsibility within a year?
Well, every day we are assuming more and more security responsibilities. Now we have the control over nearly 13 provinces out of 18. President-elect Obama has a declared position on the withdrawal of US troops within 16 months. But at the same time, I think he will consult very closely with the Iraqi government and with the commanders in the field to see the possibility of carrying out that pledge. But one word to say to Mrs. Moussawi. In fact, she talked about the unjustified war and so on. I mean, these thousands demonstrators we've seen in the Firdaus streets and the street of Baghdad, without this regime change, they would not have that opportunity or the liberty or the freedom.
The ability of Iraqi people to change the regime since 1991, and the American troop found in the Arabian Gulf, it was the guarantee for the persistence of Saddam and his regime and his gang for the next 14 years. So I believe the Iraqi people and the Iraqi citizen and the people who demonstrate today in the streets, they are able to change the regime since 1991, and I'm sure that you remember the demonstration and the revolution of the Kurdish people and the north of Iraq.
We all tried, but we failed. You see, 91, before that, and after that. But without this force that came to the help, you see, to change the regime, it would have not been possible. That's my point.
We'll take a shorter break now. Stay with us.
Truly, they want these foreign forces to stay in Iraq because their presence on Iraqi soil has become for them, consciously or unconsciously, a political maneuver. Nouri al-Maliki, Iraqi Prime Minister.